allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dan. We first need to remove discussion action number 1 because our presenter is unable to be here. And so I would like someone to please make a motion to approve the agenda with that correction.
I make a motion to remove the 2024 audit presentation
Support.
and approve the agenda with those corrections.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Williams, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mrs. Chopra,
Yes.
Mr. Williams, yes. Dr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe,
Yes.
Mrs. Richardson,
Yes.
and Mrs. Whitney.
Yes. Okay, with a vote of 6-0, we vote yes for approval of the agenda. Next, we have the consent agenda. Can we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Bring forth the motion to approve the consent agenda in its written form.
Support.
Okay, can you please call the vote?
Mr. Roscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Williams, yes. Dr. Early,
Yes.
Mrs. Richardson,
Yes.
Mrs. Chopra,
Yes.
and Mrs. Whitney.
Yes. Okay, with a vote of 6-0, we approve the consent agenda. Next, we have the superintendent's report. Ms. Gibson.
Thank you, Board President Early. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to East Point Community Schools Board meeting. And this is the superintendent's report for January 27th, 2025, as we continue on a campaign for excellence for our community. January is, let's see if you guys can see what I'm seeing. Great. January is School Board Appreciation Month, so we would like to recognize and appreciate all of our school board members here for the tremendous amount of work that they do to support our schools, staff, and students. I don't think anybody appreciates the amount of work that goes into public service, so we are grateful to have this board here with us this evening. Senator Kleinfeld recognized our East Point Community School District Board of Education as well in the attainment of the members' dedication to the students and families of East Point. This board was designated an honor board. We do have 2 new board members that are rapidly enrolling in classes to continue to maintain that distinction, and we appreciate that Senator Kleinfeld and her staff took the time to recognize this Board of Education. Thank you. There is a board vacancy. Following Monday's January 13th board meeting, we were notified that Cassie Gruenberg is resigning her position due to health reasons. We thank Mrs. Gruenberg for her 2 years of service on the Board of Education. According to the law, the board has 30 days to fill the remainder of that term via appointment. Board president and vice president have been consulting with MASB to review the process for interviewing and selecting a candidate, as well as suggested questions for the interviews. A community letter was published on January 15th detailing the requirements for the applicants and along with the timeline. Applications were received through Friday, January 24th at 12 p.m. The letter also detailed the plans for a January 30th, 2025 special board meeting to be held at the Administrative Center, 24685 Kelly Road, to interview applicants. A decision will be made no later than February 10th, although the board would have until February 12th to appoint a new board member. That letter was posted on our website as well as distributed to news media outlets. The letter was published and emailed on the 15th to all active East Point Community Schools families. The letter was also sent to the East Sider, and information regarding the board vacancy was published online on January 19th and the front page on January 22nd. We are thrilled to have 7 applicants for this vacancy: Christopher Curtis Jr., John Gruenberg, Diane Hack, Ashley Hales, Ian McCain, Shatasha McDonald, and Crystal Rucker. a few of whom are here in the audience this evening. The current trustees were all provided with the application materials. A candidate submitted a resume and a letter of interest regarding their interest in being on the board. We have coordinated, the Office of the Superintendent verified the requirements of being a voter and living in East Point Community Schools boundaries. And the board is looking forward to interviews on January 30th. They've been provided the information on each candidate via board book, as well as the superintendent update. A huge thank you to board members, Trustee Richardson, Secretary Williams, Vice President Roscoe, and President Dr. Early. We were able to attend together the Macomb County Ministerial Alliance Martin Luther King Day breakfast. It was another fantastic opportunity to be together. I think we all enjoyed the message, and I in particular enjoyed the music. I have already fangirled Mr. James, and I'm looking forward to hearing him perform again. Thank you so much to this Board of Education for representing this district at the Macomb Ministerial Alliance breakfast. K-5 transition update. Thank you to Monica Castello's class at Pleasant View. They came forward and started asking questions about the K-5 transition to currently our structure is 2 K-2 schools and 2 3-5 schools. And so the students had all kinds of amazing questions about this transition. Will they be able to help? What's recess going to look like? These are the things that inquiring minds want to know. And so this video that was created with Ms. Castello's classroom is a question and answer where the students ask a question and then the superintendent attempts to answer. Although sometimes the questions are better than the answers, so let's just be really honest there. But it was published out today and also going to be emailed out to families ahead of the publication of our new zones so that children and families can begin talking about the return to K-5 schools in our community. So a huge thank you to Mrs. Castello's classroom. They are excited to be internet famous. K-5 transition timeline. We will be publicly releasing the new boundary map to families and be notifying families via letter of their expected attendance zones on February 1st. Yes, that is a weekend, and the team will be working this week to package up and stuff individual letters to families depending on their zone and the impact that it will have on them. By the end of February, a staffing interest survey will be sent out to all of our K-5 employees to determine their preferred placement. Unfortunately, many colleagues have 3 third grades are at one building. They've come to enjoy having that. And staff will be faced with the decision of stay at the school or teach my grade level at another school. So that staffing preference list will go out so that the HR department can begin to start looking at those requests. Of course, not all requests will be able to be honored, so we will ask staff to rank their choices. Operations and building teams are beginning to have meetings with principals soon to review rooms and possible room assignments to determine if any additional needs will be there for our building principals. March 13th and 14th, there will be a district-wide kindergarten roundup hosted at the Early Learning Center. The ELC was more than happy to take on that. So one evening and one daytime will be offered for families with children turning 5 on or before September 1st. The district may not keep a centralized roundup going into the future, but for this year we will in service to the community and the incoming kids. The deadline for in-district transfer applications from current resident families as well as current approved schools of choice families will be March 17th. Families will be identified in the letter if they are needing to make action. So if they are a current schools of choice family and have been choosing East Point Community Schools as their school of choice destination, they will need to rank their choice for next year. In spring of 2025, all of our 4 elementary schools will be having open house events to start that transition for families and children back to K-5 schools. And if you have not been following along, we are making this change based on parent need and request. Many of our parents are traveling between 3, 4, and 5 different schools in our community, creating an unnecessary burden. This was part of our long-term facilities master plan to return to K-5 schools and ease the burden on our families, as well as start to create centers in our community for families and community to gather. And what a great place are schools. K-5 transition timeline. Caitlin Keenitz has already started a website page. It is linked under the For Parents section. And parents will be able to get more information about the timeline, as well as complete a survey about some of their concerns about the transition. Our team will do our best to answer those questions on this website. Athletics highlight, our Athletics and Activities Director, Paris McCarthy, was a keynote speaker at the Boys and Girls Club Gators football banquet this weekend. Ms. McCarthy, of course, did a fantastic job representing East Point and speaking about the importance of youth athletics. Our East Point wrestling team recently hosted its first home quad meet in 7 years. There was a lot of learning that went into that, but we are very proud to have that opportunity ramping up here in our community. Our girls basketball team is on a 4-game winning streak and has improved to a 5-5 record behind the leaders Rashayla Curry and Denia Sadler, both of whom received college offers. Denia is also 100 points away from her 100th career point as a Shamrock. She has 2 college offers already, and 1,000th, thank you so much. We anticipate that additional offers would be coming as well. So congratulations to our athletes. You can find out more by following at Shamrock Country on our social media to learn more about the athletics programs. Upcoming events, we have Gleaners Mobile Food Distribution on February 6th at 9:30 a.m., as well as Midwinter Break. This year it is on Monday, the 18th, and Tuesday, the 19th. Thank you so much. That concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Superintendent. Next, we have hearing of the public. Is anybody wish to be heard? Please state your name and speak into the mic.
Good evening. Mary Hall Rayford. I honestly don't know what to say. When voters have rejected a person rather soundly, I don't understand how anyone could even consider overturning the will of the people. We've had examples of that on a national level, but this is pretty sad. For someone to have been in a position for 20 years and the people decided no more. Haven't really seen a lot of integrity and transparency from this board in the past. I hope that's going to change soon, because if it doesn't, I can imagine the next time there's an election for board members, voters will reject some additional people. This is important. Integrity is important. Our children are important, and they deserve better than recycled, do nothing. I hope you're hearing what I'm saying. Hope you're understanding what I'm saying, because it's about the kids. And if it's not about them, what's your purpose? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Cindy Federley. I don't know how I can get my questions answered about your procedure for getting another board member. I know when city council had to appoint a new council person, they published in the agenda the resumes of the people wishing for that seat. They accepted input from residents. We were able to email the school board about our feelings about the choices. I want to know if the school board's going to open that up and be transparent with your decision. I want to know how I can tell you personally what my thoughts are. I can tell you now that Mr. Gruenberg has no business. How arrogant for him to even have put his name in that board selection process. He was soundly defeated. It was not a close race by any means. You need to listen to the people that put you in your position. You need to be available to hear from us. Dr. Early, you have stated you don't check your school email. How do I let you know? If I email you, will I get a response? Will you provide the applications so that when I attend the meeting next week, I know what you're facing? And will you listen to the residents? You have to start listening to the residents. My second point I want to make is the trustee comments need to come back. I need to know why and what you were thinking when you voted either for or against something. I need to hear discussion. You bring something in front of the board and it's a vote. There's never any discussion amongst you to find out why you vote, how you vote. None of you question anything that's presented. We need better transparency. I still haven't gotten answers on that bus that you purchased with no plans on who could drive it, what the parameters were going to be for who can drive it. You guys just aren't serving the community, and you need to start doing that, please. And welcome to the new members. I hope you make a difference. That's what we're praying for. Yes.
For the questions that you have, please see administration because those questions have been answered. So please see them so you can get those answers.
Administration answers, not the school board?
No,
because
they have been answered so you can get the information from them from our last school board meeting and the
Okay.
answers that you need because they have been answered.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else wish to be heard? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, and congratulations for your school board month. My name is Sheila Ulinsky, and I'm going to start out with a definition of trust. The firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability of strength of someone or something. Relationships have to be built on trust. That goes for the entire community and the children. First and foremost are always the children that you are up there representing. Trust is important to me, as it should be to all. For me, once the trust is broken, it's gone forever and can never come back. Something I've always said to my children is, you are only as good as your word. If your word means nothing, you don't have much say-so or relationship with anyone else. The Planning Commission is going to be developing a master plan for 2040. In this plan, the Planning Commission does the future of what we want to see for East Point. That includes having good boards and a good foundation. And because we're a family town, the school is one of the most important areas that needs to be a solid foundation. That's what families look for when they're looking for a city to move into. Without these families, you don't have a city. A good system is one of the first criteria and should be the best in regards to the children. And I say this coming from a mother who was a teacher for 38 years. I know a lot about the education system. How we are able to attract these families if we can't provide a good, solid education. It starts with a good, solid school board and superintendent. There is no room for bullies, self-servicing, backdoor, underhanded deals, or the best orchestrated circus in town. There is room for board members that are doing what they are elected to do, developing a good, solid education platform, putting the students first, be the role for the best interest of the students only, keep the circus under the big tent and not under the school roof. Set an example, stand up to bullies and do what is right by the students. Teamwork is what is needed. People should not be persuaded by hardship stories advertised on social media pages if the purpose is for an ulterior motive. We all have those stories,
30 seconds.
and they are not to be put out for the world to see because those people do not have an agenda. One more quick definition. An ulterior motive is a concealed meaning or intention behind saying or doing something. Ulterior motivation usually has a negative connotation because acting with ulterior motive or a hidden agenda is typically considered sneaky and self-serving. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else wish to be heard? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Jennifer Nicholas. First of all, thank you all for all that you do. I agree with most everyone here that our children are most important. Education is the foundation of every community. Without good education and good schools, we really have not much to stand on. I realize that the district has been facing some obstacles. A lot of school districts are. I just read an article in Crain's Detroit talking about how enrollment has dropped in most every community, and for East Point, the enrollment has decreased 52% between 2009 and 2023. In 2023, the enrollment was 2,186 students. I grew up in East Point. I was a student during the 70s when we had 6 or 7 grade schools, 3 junior high schools, and a high school that could only contain 3 grades, not 4, because there were too many in the community. I realize a lot has changed. We did have an election in November. 5 candidates were vying for 4 positions. 2 newcomers received the most votes. To me, this indicates that voters, which I assume are a lot of parents and a lot of people that are involved in the school district, seem to want change. I can't speak to anyone's job performance. I really don't know the ins and outs. I don't know any of you personally. I don't know Mr. Grunberg personally, but I did see that he came in last by a significant margin, and that seems to be the voters speaking that they seriously wanted a change. There's an open position on the board. I understand that Mr. Grunberg has applied. To me, this seems like this is going against what voters want, and it could be perceived as doing an end run around the voting process. It might make more sense to select another newcomer, since it seems voters want new blood on the board. And you would have a good mix of people that have been here for a while and some fresh faces and fresh blood. I think that would be advantageous for the community and a good fresh start. Again, I don't know Mr. Grunberg personally, and I don't know much of what
30 seconds.
may have transpired over the last term. I assume that he could put his name in 2026 when there is another election and let the voters decide again whether they would like him back on the board. Again, I appreciate the time here, and I do appreciate all that you do, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to be heard? Okay, seeing none. Oh, yes.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to speak today. My name is Lynn Ellis, and I'm here representing CARE of Southeastern Michigan. I provide technical assistance to both the Roseville Community Coalition as well as the East Point Community Action Coalition. I'm here requesting the board's approval to collaborate with schools in our district and implement evidence-based curriculum and alternatives to suspension programs. At CARE, our mission is to offer free substance use prevention, treatment, and recovery services that equip the community to build resiliency and skills and knowledge for the rest of their lives. We understand that there are significant challenges that substance use poses to the student population, and we are committed to proactive, preventative measures that make a meaningful impact. We offer evidence-based K-12 programs that can be tailored to your schools. We've witnessed the positive impact that these programs have had in other communities, and we're eager to extend the benefit of these programs to the East Point Community School District. By working together, we can foster resiliency and empower our student populations to make healthier choices and ultimately cultivating to a more supportive and productive school environment. I urge you to consider this partnership, which seeks not only to prevent substance use, but also promote an overall well-being of the student population, and together we can make a lasting difference in their lives. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Is there anybody else wish to be heard? Okay, when no one else would like to speak, we're closing the hearing of the public at 6:57. Okay. Our next discussion item is recommendation for approval of the summer 2025 renovations.
Good evening, members of the board. Today, I'm bringing you a recommendation for award of contracts for summer 2025 building renovations. It's termed Bid Pack 8 by our consultants. This summer, we plan on replacing the unit ventilators at Pleasant View Elementary School. Those are on the outside wall. And along with that, there's casework that surrounds the unit ventilator and bookshelves that extend the length of the classroom. That would also be included in that project. Also on this recommendation is our 2 rooftop air conditioning units for East Point High School Auditorium. Those have been failing over the last few years, and they're way beyond their useful life. And we've been putting money into it, and it's like pouring money down the drain at this point, so we'd like to get those replaced. Just to give a little frame of reference, the other 3 elementary schools have their air conditioning unit ventilators already installed. They will all be hooked up at the same time upon probably this fall sometime, when all the electrical is in place. So right now, we're waiting for some electrical components, transformers, and once those are all hooked up, installed, then they'll do the testing and get everything up and running. So hopefully it'll be cool by then, and we won't need them until the following summer. The total of the bid package, it's for 5 vendors. It's $2,742,325 for this project. And we're also recommending a 10% contingency for unforeseen construction items that might occur. So the total with the construction contingency is $3,016,557.50. Do we have any questions?
Robert, what type of coolers are going up? Are they water cooled or?
No, they're 2 large air conditioning units mounted on the rooftop, so they'll need a crane to get them up there. It's the most efficient way to go.
And there's a plan attached with, in case they break down over the years, and you've given it.
There's a warranty, and they'll also be what we call commissioning work, where we test them to make sure they're operating as they should be before we make final payment.
The third question, how strong are those?
You know, I don't have,
What do they cover?
I can get that for you. I don't have the BTUs here. I will inform the superintendent. Okay.
That's all I have.
As well pertaining to the same thing that he has, when you say the air conditions, because there's a lot of, the buildings are one level, so is there going to be to a point to that they're very protective and no one could get on and destroy or take or something?
Well, the unit ventilators themselves are like, you can see them from the outside of each classroom because you'll see the vents actually blowing the air out. And then on top of the building, they're surface-mounted units that push all the air into these unit ventilators. So I'm not sure what type of security it is, right? We haven't had any problems with that. I'm not sure if there's some type of cage or something around them. I will find that out. and let you guys know.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to be heard or have a question?
You mentioned, you said all five were going up at the same time?
But they'll be operational at the same time.
Operational at the same
Right.
time? So is there a separate control room, or are they going to be gated?
They're all in one control system, which is run by Ron Smith at the Operations Center. So if there's a temperature problem in a certain room, he can adjust it through the software.
And parts, are we purchasing additional parts due to the climate that we're living in right about now? We have extra parts where we don't have to wait on them in case something goes down.
Well, it's under warranty for a period of time. If it turns out down the road, I think that there is a certain problem, we would deal with the vendor on that.
And I hope we don't have to wait for parts.
Well, that's gotten a lot better.
Oh, it's gotten-
Yeah, the lead time is much better.
Thank you, Rob.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Robert, my question is about the contingency, because I always worry that we have to come back and ask for extra money because the bid was too low or something. Is that 10%? I know it's standard, but have we ever had a problem with it being just that 10%?
No, we've not.
Haven't, okay.
We've used, I think just about every project, we've had some of that contingency returned to the district.
Okay.
We've never burned through the whole thing, so.
Okay. Yes, that's always be my worry, because coming back makes it look like we chose somebody who didn't know what they were
Right.
doing or anything, so good, we don't have that.
Yeah. It's typically a problem when they open up the wall and they find like rusted out pipes or, some wiring that's not up to code or something like that. You can't tell by
you
just
can't
estimating the
tell.
project until you open up the walls.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, that was my question. Go right
For the
ahead.
game, to jump in here.
Go right ahead.
There's language attached to every contract
Mm-hmm.
and to protect the low ballers. Maybe this is, but Superintendent, or for you, that language that states that you have to be competitive in your bidding, not low baller.
Well, we have specifications in each bid, and they're developed by our architect and our construction management firm. And then the bids are received, and they go through each bid line item by line item to make sure it meets specifications. Oftentimes that we find is the low bid did not meet the specifications. So either we get clarification from the vendor, say, hey, did you remember to include this? And they'll give us something in writing, or they'll say, no, we didn't, and we'll disqualify the bid.
Right.
Or sometimes we can also take a partial bid, if it's structured that way.
Okay,
So there's protection for the district so that that we are aware of what we're getting for the contract award.
because I actually had that question, because I had to
Yeah.
call and ask about that because of the two differences in these two, under the two top bids that we had.
Yeah.
I had to ask it, I don't know nothing about construction.
Yeah,
So thank you for answering that.
sure.
And for transparency, we take five, but you said there's five bids, but normally we take three as a norm on each project.
We'd like to have a minimum of 3.
Yes.
It's possible that certain vendors won't bid because they're too busy, or they know they can't get the work done within the time frame. So, but we actively solicit bidders. We invite them to bid. The bid is posted on a state website, which automatically sends emails out to every contractor that's registered with the state of Michigan. In addition to that, our construction management firm has a track record of dealing with, various firms, and they will contact those and invite them to bid also.
I do have one question, Robert. When you say that when they put in the electrical structure, they're going to one control room, my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, if that's the case, then all 5 systems will be daisy-chained into that one control room. So does that mean if one system goes down, it affects the other 4?
So
Or are they on their own circuit?
There's one, when we say system, there's like one software system.
Okay.
And each building is just like, each room is like a reference, like an item that they can control, like it's on a menu. So they could see like, any specific room that's on this software. It'll tell them the temperature, or if, I think there's warning things if like the electrical is out or if the boiler shuts off. Those are all messages that show up on the software. So it's all one system. It's not separate systems.
So my question is, if you have a problem in building A, does that affect B, C, and D?
No, no, no. So they all have their own boiler, their own rooftop units.
Okay.
The only thing that's common among it is the software that controls them.
Okay.
And that brings up one question, the carbon, like we put the carbon things in our homes to make sure, would that be a protection for the children in the classroom?
So the boilers are set up to have they shut off automatically if the right oxygen mix is not there. And the unit ventilators will shut off also if there's a problem. The code has certain safeguards in it. And so all this equipment reflects all this latest standards.
Thank you.
What is our warranty on these? I mean, how many years?
I think it's 2 years, but I can confirm that for you. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Okay. Can we get a motion to approve the summer 25 renovations?
Let's walk the motion to approve the recommendation for approval for the summer 2025 renovations, bid package.
Support.
Can you please call the vote?
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Williams, yes. Dr. Early?
Yes.
Mrs. Richardson?
Yes.
Mrs. Chopra?
Yes.
And Mrs. Whitby?
Yes.
Okay, with approval of 6-0, the recommendation for approval of the summer renovation has been approved. Okay, and now we have a discussion action Board of Education, K-5 transition attendance zone maps.
So good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board and also the community. I'd like to invite Communications and Marketing Coordinator Caitlin Keenitz out to the podium. Caitlin has been absolutely instrumental in spending countless hours playing with the boundary lines as well as current enrollment and school of choice enrollment. I'd like to give her the podium to talk you through the maps. There will not be an action this evening. This is going to be a board discussion and information for our community. Thank you. Caitlin.
All right, good evening. If you want to go ahead and click ahead. So we did a lot of research before we started putting these maps together. So the maps I'm about to show you show the active families we have based on our current enrollment in grades pre-K through 4. So that would be next year's K through 5 students. We consulted census data, including population density, percentage of owner-occupied homes, and percentage of children under the age of 18. That's as granular as we can get with the census data as the under 18, but it was informative. When this data was pulled, we had 837 resident students and 134 non-resident students in grades preschool through 4th. The kindergarten estimates that we're starting with are based on our current GSRP enrollment, which is our free 4-year-old preschool program. We know not all of them will stay. And based on our last 2 kindergarten classes, which have been much larger than the classes before them, we should expect between 80 to 100 more kindergarten students district-wide than what we're accounting for here. These zones were created in an attempt to create equitable school sizes while also balancing transportation and safety needs. So these have been brought to the executive cabinet, the director's cabinet, the principals, to get some feedback on where we're headed with this. So this map is the city of East Point and our little bit of Warren over there. And each one of those pinpoints indicates a family that currently attends preschool through fourth grade in this district. So before we go any further, I want to point out a couple of things that are probably pretty apparent as you're looking at this map. The population density on the east side of Gratiot is much higher than the population density on the west side of Gratiot, which everyone up here is an East Point resident. You know, if you drive down by the Early Learning Center, those houses have a driveway between them, and that is it, right? Those are very tiny lots, and the houses are very close together. If you drive down by Crescentwood, there's a farm down there with a barn. The houses in that area are on double or triple the size lot compared to what we see on the east side of Gratiot. There's also a lot of large property that is not occupied at all. When you look in that southwest corridor, there's a big open space in the middle. That is Underwood Park and also our vacant property, our Warrendale property. You'll also see a big old block that is East Point High School. You will see a couple of senior living complexes on 9 Mile, which have a lot of population but no children. So what that results in is, which our schools are seeing this year, Forest Park and Pleasant View's enrollment is considerably higher than Crescentwood and Bellevue, and that's just a nature of how densely populated the east side of the city is compared to the west side, which also was obvious from the census data. It's much denser on the east side than it is on the west side. So none of these trends were really surprising, but I do think the visual is pretty effective when you look how tightly compacted, especially in that area, like out by Kennedy Park and south of there. So this is our current elementary enrollment that we would expect to stay with us for next year. So if you want to go to the next slide. So this is the boundary lines that, after much discussion and much examination, we've kind of landed on. Some of it's going to look really, really obvious because right now we draw the line right down Gratiot, right? 9 Mile is the easy midpoint. You see this interesting little block of the blue, and that is where we were looking at ways to balance out our enrollment a little bit and have some of our children that live on the east side of Gratiot would go to Bellevue. This would allow us to balance those class sizes better. It would allow us to balance our teaching loads a little bit better. And it would mean being able to provide the same access to multiple schools and not have one feel like, oh my gosh, we have so many students, and another, have so many fewer. As we were looking at this, the other thing, I had each student listed and kind of marked off what school they're at now and which school they would be zoned to. A lot of the students who live north of Stevens on the east side of Gratiot are already in-district transfers to Bellevue. So their parents were already choosing for their 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders to just drive them across 10 Mile 2 minutes rather than have them ride the bus down to Pleasant View. So for some of those families, it's not going to be very disruptive because that's already what they're choosing to do. And then the discussion also followed that we would not ask an elementary schooler to cross Gratiot Avenue on foot. Any student that lives on that east side of Gratiot that is zoned to Bellevue would be offered transportation. And that's a discussion that's been had, and I know Robert and our transportation department would confirm that for you. So while this doesn't give us equal numbers, and of course this is just an estimate because we've still got 80 to 100 kindergartners out there that we don't know about yet, it does give us a more equitable balance at 3 out of the 4 schools. Crescentwood is always going to be our smallest enrollment unless somebody was to decide to build an apartment complex or, some multifamily housing went in that area. There are so many spots where there's just no housing that we can't anticipate enrollment to really increase at Crescentwood. We've discussed that gives us other opportunities in that area with some of those classrooms. But that unexpected little wedge there, which if you want to click to the next slide, you can kind of see what the boundary streets are because I can't remember them off the top of my head. I think it's Shakespeare and Piper.
Yep, Lambrecht.
Lambrecht.
So it goes Lambrecht, Stevens, and then cuts down between Rain and Piper.
Okay, so, and we looked at multiple versions of this. We tried a couple different streets. We tried, let's go straight down Lambrecht. Well, that moved so many students that now we've upset the balance in the other direction. So when you look at the, not just our current enrolled students, like I want to be clear here, this is also backed up by the census data for this area and the population density. Of course, since these are attendance zones, if we were to come to a point in the future where we were seeing that balance upset, the administration or the board could make a move to shift those lines in the future. But for right now, especially, this would help us provide equitable resources to all 4 schools and not have 1 or 2 feeling like they are wildly overtaxed. So if you want to go to that last slide, there were just a couple more points. Like the superintendent said in her report, these maps will be released and families will be notified of their zoned school on February 1st. Families will receive a letter that includes the following: an upcoming timeline of dates and deadlines, the process for requesting in-district transfers, because we know that some families are going to want to stay at a school. They'll have the avenue to do that. If that makes more sense for them, if that's what they want to do, they will still have that option. We'll also include in that the process for our current school of choice families to request their preferred school placement. We will have them rank those. That deadline, as Superintendent Gibson said, will be March 17th. That gives families plenty of time to make that discussion, but then we can make decisions based on some real numbers as opposed to just guessing where families are going to decide to go. Because right now, we have many, many families who have 2 to 4 children split between 2 schools. And so we don't know if they're going to want to stay at the school where they're zoned, if they're going to want to stay at one of the schools their child attended previously. We want to give them that option, but we also want to give staffing an opportunity to staff classrooms properly so that we're ready for the beginning of the school year. Families that are living in that zone that moves from what you would expect to be Forest Park to Bellevue will receive additional communication to explain why that decision was made, and again, to reinforce that they will receive transportation to safely cross Gratiot Avenue. We've also started meeting with the city. They're aware that we may need more crossing guards. One of the upsides of going to K-5 elementary schools is that hopefully more families can walk to and from school, which will hopefully alleviate some of the pickup and drop-off pressures that we see around some of the elementary schools. And then the families of students who are receiving special education services in a self-contained classroom will receive separate communications, as the building placement for these classrooms is not yet finalized. We're working on it. I was meeting with Lori Rush about what she wants to tell families at this point and what she's still trying to work out, but we want to make sure that those families are aware their children are going to continue to receive the same services, the same supports that are detailed in their IEPs that they're getting right now. We're just not sure if it'll be in the building where their child is zoned to attend or if it will be in another building. There's some of that going on already. So, that was everything I had to present. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to try to fill in some blanks.
I'm waiting on them. Come on in and join the party, y'all. Great presentation.
Okay.
You got your geographical down and in the population area. If you could go back 2 slides where you, Lambert, that seems to be a soft spot.
Christy, to the Bellevue slide, I think is what, the next one, or to.
No, the
okay.
next, yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
It seems to be a soft spot.
It was
Where
just.
are they
I'm sorry.
gravitating to? What school do you think?
Well, right now.
What does the data say?
Right now, they're attending Forest Park or Pleasant View based on their grade level, for the most part. Again, some of the students that you see in the blue there, which would move to Bellevue, some of those students are already choosing, their families are choosing for them to go to Bellevue, and driving them rather than having them take the bus to Pleasant View. So I mean, generally speaking, the majority are attending the school that they're currently zoned to where they would receive bus transportation. Because based on that distance, all of the students along there are eligible for bus transportation right now, whether they're going to Forest Park or Pleasant View. So it would be a shift. I think when we looked at the numbers, it impacts about 50 families, I think, out of the 900 and some elementary families that we have. And we do know, I mean, this is why we're planning to send a separate communication to those families with that additional information. If they want, if they've got a fourth grader at Pleasant View and they're just so happy they want one more year, they will absolutely have the option to do that in-district transfer process, and transport their child. But the numbers for Forest Park were showing very, very high and very overwhelming, I think, in comparison to some of the schools on the other, to Bellevue and Crescentwood. So again, we tried a couple of different boundaries to see where we can kind of balance out some of the less dense up in that top part there. Those are also some bigger lots too, I think we noticed. So we tried a couple of different boundaries with that.
Great. So I don't want to push the cart before the horse, but I see a lot of congestion in terms of transportation. Once you begin to start moving these bodies from school to school, this side of Gratiot, that side of Gratiot, would we have to add more transportation, or will we minimize our transportation by getting the parents to either walk or take their children to school, since we're condensing?
Yeah.
families together?
Right now, we've asked, Robert Carlesso oversees the Dean Transportation contract. We've been struggling with Dean Transportation, with keeping drivers. There's a high turnover rate. Brought it up a few board meetings ago, but this plan will actually reduce the burden on transportation. Right now, we're running a relay between our K2 and 3-5 schools. And so the buses are very full. We will be busing in a radius around the schools, and so it would actually reduce our transportation. But Dean is working on running a simulation for us, so that we can better understand the impact there as well. But we are anticipating either 3/4 of a mile or half a mile for busing, so we're working to figure that out right now. But we do think it would improve transportation services as opposed to what we're currently operating.
One of the examples that we've given is we have students who live on Roxana across the street from Forest Park that are currently being bused to Pleasant View because they are in 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade. And so that's where they're going, and vice versa. We have kids that live right on Topher down by Pleasant View. They can see Pleasant View from their front window. They're on the bus to Forest Park every day because that's where kindergarten is. So some of these students who can't walk to school now might just be going a block down the street with whoever was taking them a block down the street to get on the bus. So hopefully that will also alleviate some of that on our busing, but also on parent drop-off and pickup, because if you've been around any of our elementaries at 8 o'clock in the morning, it is not a fun time.
We also found that in those parent surveys, parents were excited about now their older child can walk the younger child to school. By dividing into K2 and 3-5, we removed those older students who could be mentors and walking buddies. And so that created more of a burden on our families as well.
We mentioned transportation, but if you can just touch on just a little, and again, that's far out. Walk me through a safety component. Pick an area and tell me how would I know our children are walking or waiting on the bus, how safe are we making it?
So generally, I mean, with the walking, it would be roughly the same distance that we're using now. So students that are currently walking, we have crossing guards in place. We've got Mr. Zander here as one example, but we have crossing guards in place. We do have at some of the schools, I don't know if it's all, but at some of the schools, we've had the East Point Police there in the mornings to help with that safety piece because there are so many cars coming and going. So that will continue. And again, we did meet with the city already with police chief, just to talk about, they kind of have, what was it, the safe streets to school?
The city had a grant a number of years ago to do
We
a
know where
study
the
on
pressure
safe
points
routes
are.
to school.
Yeah.
So we know some of those walking routes, and the city did a number of repairs on some of those walking routes to our schools as well on sidewalks. But we would expect to continue to partner with the police department, especially on Topher. Seems to be a lot of high rate of speed traveling down Topher with a lack of awareness about the school. And then we do have a high amount of congestion at Forest Park for pickup and drop off. And they actually made Forest a one-way during the pickup and drop off hours. So we'll continue to work with East Point Police to ensure that those routes are safe.
Bring back the safety patrol.
We would like to. That's in the video that we talked with the students, is that with having fifth grade at every building, we could have more opportunities for them to participate in safety patrol and help the younger kids be safe, so.
That's all I have.
I would like to ask a question. How often are the maps going to be checked for revision?
And so the ideal elementary school size is between 300 and 500 children. Our elementaries are built, I think Carrie Weishaupt told me, their sweet spot for our elementary schools is about 350 to 400. So if we see enrollment is trending up at one school, we'll be watching that east side of the town because we have quite a denser population on the east side with more children. So we'll be watching and monitoring that annually. Well, because that's part of what our team does now, is we're constantly looking at what we're doing. Is it working? What changes can we make? And we'll monitor those enrollment trends. The goal for us is also to reduce the number of split classrooms that we have across the district, which was one of the rationales that the board and the then administration had. It was a cost savings to go to K2, 3, 5s because you could reduce the number of full-time teachers. But the community demand and the need that the parents have to be back in community schools, I think, is a better decision for children long-term to return.
Speaking of the teachers, because you're moving, I know you already addressed it, but just to reiterate to the, because we're moving so many students to other schools, are the teachers gonna have like a say-so in where they go? And
Yeah, so there, that was one of the, towards the end of February, our Department of Human Resources is gonna send out a staffing survey to those teachers so that they can say what their preferences are. Some teachers might say, I'm a kindergarten teacher, I'm teaching kindergarten wherever it is, but then you might have a second grade teacher that says, I'd be willing to teach third or fourth grade if it means I get to stay at Crescentwood. So they will, as the superintendent said in her update, can't honor all of those requests, but by giving them kind of a way to prioritize like what's most important to them, we can hopefully accommodate some things and make things a little smoother for them as well.
And on that point, is it mandatory? Are you going to try to make it mandatory, or are you still going to be voluntary, or how would you do that if there's more than one or two wants to go to the same place and you needed other places?
For staffing?
Right, so how
That would probably be
that work?
a Julie question.
So the way staffing is done now is, we have been doing it, is that annually teachers get an opportunity to request something. We can't honor everybody's request. So we prioritize based on evaluation score. So if you're highly effective, those individuals get staffed first. Then if there's a tie, we go to seniority, and we use the collective bargaining agreement seniority. So seniority is the tiebreaker. So a teacher with and highly effective is no longer the language that's used in evaluation. It will go to the highest evaluation score, then the tiebreaker will be seniority.
Does the principal have to say so?
Principals are involved in district staffing. We do it as a whole team, and we listen to everybody's input.
You had spoke on the IEPs, the students with IEPs.
Yeah.
So sometimes, change is triggering. to
Yep.
this. So.
Yeah, and that's part of why we have not determined where those classrooms are going to be. One thing that Lori Rush, our special education director, has said is, you know, based on our current needs and allocations, we won't have room for a K2 and a 3-5 self-contained room at every building. But they're going to make their best effort to try to make that as non-disruptive as possible for those students because it is challenging.
And their parents had surveys as well?
Yes.
Okay.
They're gonna have, she's planning to have some additional information meetings for those parents as well. And it would really just impact those self-contained classroom students. Resource room, we have more flexibility. But for those students, absolutely, that is a big part of the consideration.
Thank you. I had one more. When we're in the classrooms, you have the parapros and things helping out or extra. Are you going to go through the same process with them, or how would we deal with the parapro or the ones that's helping out the teachers?
Paraprofessionals will be given surveys as well, asked where they would like to be staffed and in what position. Lots of paraprofessionals receive specialized training. If they are special education, a para, if they are a media center paraprofessional, those are very different skill sets. So we'll start by honoring the position that they're in first, and the skills and the time and the professional learning that has gone in. But paraprofessionals have, as part of our hiring process, been offered input into their placement as well. Again, we cannot guarantee everybody's placement because sometimes there is only one specific position that is associated with that. But we do our very best to elicit input and then act on the input that we get.
How much redesigning of rooms is going to happen with this?
So I know that's something that Carrie Weishaupt has already been looking at, thinking about, you know, we've got several buildings where kindergarten classrooms haven't been for the last several years. So they're already starting to look at those floor plans and figure out like which rooms at Bellevue and Pleasant View can have kindergarten with minimal work. So Carrie would have to speak more on that as we kind of get into the process. I don't know if there's anything.
The schools were all built as K-5 schools.
Oh.
So
Yeah.
there are no major structural changes because at the time of construction, all of the schools were running as K-5 schools. There are a few schools where some bathrooms in classrooms have gone offline and been converted into closets. We'll be looking at that. When we did the furniture purchase, we made sure to purchase the same color furniture across the district because we were anticipating as we engaged in the long-term facilities master plan. So we also purchased the same media center furniture all throughout the district so that if there has to be some furniture adjustments, and we already planned for that in the initial purchasing of those items as well. So the schools, because they were built to be K-5 schools initially, things that could be disrupted, not every school may have a separate room for art and a separate room for music and a separate, many of our buildings, classroom spaces started to get used as office spaces as well. And so there may be some disruption of if you have a classroom as an office, that may not be your office for next year. Instead, you may be in a shared space or there may be many people in a space. So those are those conversations that Carrie Weishaupt will be having with principals now as he remembers what the rooms used to be, because many of them were designated as serving younger children. And we'll be assessing those in-classroom restrooms that were taken offline and determining what the cost might be and if it's a necessity based on the cost-benefit analysis that we enter into.
I'm telling my age right now, but there was a time in the elementary school where the teacher was like a homeroom teacher and she taught various subjects, social studies, science, English, one of those. Are they set up to that way in these schools here?
Yep, so currently in our K2 buildings and our 3-5 buildings, students are assigned traditionally one teacher who teaches all subject areas. Where that starts to get different is certain teaching teams. We've had over the years certain teaching teams with principals request to departmentalize, usually in the upper grade levels, like 5th grade is a pretty common one, where the 5th grade group of teachers will work together and say, you know, you have a strength in mathematics, I have a strength in science, how about I, you know, do that? So that has been allowed, that departmentalization at certain elementary schools with the right mix of teachers. But in general, all of our K-5 students are attached to one teacher throughout the course of the year, and that teacher teaches all the subjects. The rotation happens for art, music, physical education, and we're piloting STEM. And so those classes are single classes. So there's one art teacher that travels between multiple schools and would deliver the same curriculum that way.
If anybody has any questions, less about the maps and more about how this is going to look going forward, we did share the student question and answer video on our social media today. It's on our website. It's on our YouTube. So if you're watching this on our live stream and you just want to click over when this is done, it's only 4.5 minutes. But the kids had some really great questions, really insightful about like what their day-to-day is going to look like and how that's going to change. And I think they did a really great job of bringing forward the things that other kids and other parents are going to be wondering about. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that. It's at least kind of a starting point. We know we're going to have a lot more conversations about this moving forward. One of my biggest priorities for communication this year has been this K-5 transition. I'm a parent of a lower elementary student in another city, and I know that I want a lot of information when it comes to what's going on with my kid for next school year. And so I think, you know, our parents want that same thing. And so that's kind of how I've been approaching it. If I was a parent in this district, what would I need to know and when would I need to know it? And so that's the approach with this website. Anything that we mail out, anything we present, anything that is ready to go is going to be on this website. The screenshot that I took this afternoon to pop in here is actually already different than what it is now because I got that new video up on there. And there's a survey on the sidebar. Some of our parents already saw this. It's the one we sent out back in the fall for initial feedback. We opened that back up. So if parents have more questions or concerns, please pop them in there. We can answer those questions there. We can answer those questions in your buildings. We'll have information that's going to be going out through the school newsletters. We'll have information coming out via email and mail. And then again, everything is going to end up on this website. So there'll be one place that if you're a parent of an elementary school student and you're like, oh, did I miss something? It will all be right there.
Well, Caitlin, thank you so very much. And thank you for all of the work that you've put into running all of those maps and helping our team disseminate SEMCOG data and census data and enrollment data, and you've done a fantastic job. So thank you so very much.
Okay, there is no approval. This was just a discussion item for us to hear what is happening with the maps. And there will be more information about this as we go on. And please go onto the parent website so that you can get the most up-to-date information on what is going on. And if you don't understand something like that, please contact our administration because they're going to keep you in the loop. And so we thank you so much for coming out, and meeting is adjourned at 7:40. Oh, yeah, that. I forgot I'm new.